Masechet Baba Batra Daf Kof Chaf Bet Iba Yalehu Eretz Yisrael Lishvatim Iflug or Dilma Lekarkaf Gabre Iflug. A question was asked to the sages in the Bet HaMidrash. Was Eretz Yisrael divided at that first generation when they entered the land? Was it divided by tribes, meaning every single tribe got the same amount of land, the same size? Whether it was a big tribe or a small tribe, they all got the same amount of land, or did it go by each person's skulls, meaning the amount of people? So every person got the same amount of land, and therefore a tribe with a lot of people would get a large amount of land to take care of all the people in that tribe, and a small tribe would get a smaller amount of land, but every person got the same amount. All right, this is a pretty important question. Usually we assume the second one, that Larav, right, the big one gets more and the small one gets less, the small tribe, so that everybody got equal. And one of the reasons we assume that is because Rashi on Chumash says exactly that. So we're going to be a little bit surprised here that the Gemara is going to come to the opposite conclusion, that it actually went by tribes. Tashema ben Rav Limat, the first proof is from a pasuk that says, according to the lot shall their inheritance be divided, whether more or fewer, meaning whether there's a lot of people in the tribe or a few people in the tribe, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets the same size land. Every tribe, that is, gets the same size land. So that's proof number one. ועוד תניא, עתידה ארץ ישראל שתתחלק ל13 שבטים, שבתחילה לא נתחלקה אלא ל12 שבטים, ולא נתחלקה אלא בכסף שנאמר בין רב למעט. אמר רבי יהודה, שאה ביהודה שווה 5 שאין בגליל. Another proof is going to be from this Baraita. The Baraita is rather long, but one part of it will be the proof. And the Baraita says that in the future, the land of Israel will be divided into 13 parts. It is in the times of Mashiach. There's various Pisukim from Yechezkel that talk about the future Yerushalayim and how big it's going to be. And at that time, the land will be 13 parts. We'll see what the 13th is for. Because originally, in the time of the Exodus of Egypt, the land was divided into only 12 parts for the 12 tribes. And furthermore, when it was divided by monetary value, as the Pasuk says, same Pasuk that we quoted just above, whether more or less. And Rabbi Yehuda explains that it depends on the value of the land, because one se'ah of land in Yehuda is worth 5 in the Galil, because the land in Yehuda, in that mountainous region, is much more valuable, 5 times more valuable than land out in the Galilee. And therefore, when they divided the land, they divided it equally, according to equal area of land, but then one tribe would pay the other if there was a difference in value. And so kind of like in Monopoly, when you trade properties, and so you take an expensive property, the other one takes a cheap property, but one player will pay the other for the difference in the value. So that's what they did. But they all got the same area. So this is another proof that they got the same amount of area by tribe. ולא נתחלקה אלא בגורל, שנאמר אך בגורל, ולא נתחלקה אלא באורים ותומים, שנאמר על פי הגורל. And furthermore, the Braita continues, it was divided by a lottery, as the Pasuk says, only by lottery. And also it was divided based on the Urim Vetumim, as it says, Al Pi HaGoral, by the pronouncement of the lot by the Urim Vetumim. And so, which one is it? HaKesad. So how can it be both the Goral and also the Urim Vetumim? El Azar melubash Urim Vetumim v'Yoshua v'chol Yisrael omdim lefanav v'kalpi shel shevatim v'kalpi shel techumin munachin lefanav. El Azar, the Kohen Gadol, would wear the Urim Vetumim, and Yoshua and all the nation would be standing in front of him. And he had a container with the names of the 12 Shevatim, and another container with the borders. They pre-divided the land into 12 equal areas and wrote down the borders of those 12 areas and put them in a different container. And then Elazar, based on Ruach HaKodesh, meaning based on the Urim V'Tumim, he would say, the Zevulun, I'm going to pick up from one container, I'm going to pick out the slip that says Zevulun, and from the other container, I'm going to pick out the slip that says the area of Akko, and then I'm going to pick these both out, and they will be matched with each other. So he predicted what he's going to pick out, and then he would pick them out. Taraf bekalpi shel shevatim ve'ala biyado Zebulun. Taraf bekalpi shel techumin ve'ala biyado techum Akko. And then sure enough, he would take from the container of all the tribes, and he would get Zebulun, and he would take from the other container that had the areas, and he would get the area of Akko. And so that proved that this was not actually random. The randomness was a way of divining, of showing that this is by divine providence. And so they would use the lottery together with the Urim V'Tumim to show that Hashem pre-decided everything. And this was the way of giving that message. וחוזר מכוון ברוח הקודש ואומר, נפתלי עולה תחום גינוסד עולה עמו, תראה בקלפי של שבטים ועלה בידו נפתלי, תראה בקלפי של תחומים ועלה בידו תחום גינוסד, וכן כל שבט ושבט. And similarly, Elazar would announce, based on Ruach HaKodesh of the Urim V'Tumim, that he's going to pick up Naphtali from one of the containers, and he's going to pick out the area of Ginosad together with it, and sure enough, he would pick out from the container of the tribes, Naphtali, and from the other container of the areas, he would pick out the area of Ginosad, and this happened for all 12 of the Shevatim. Of course, after 11, there's only one left, so then the last one would be automatic. ולא כחלוקה של עולם הזה, חלוקה של עולם הבא. העולם הזה, אדם יש לו שדה לבן, אין לו שדה פרדס. שדה פרדס, אין לו שדה לבן. And furthermore, the division that was done in this world, meaning for the first generation after Mitzrayim, that division was not like the one that will be in the future. Olam haba here is not in the afterlife, but rather in the messianic times. Olam, literally, olam, the world that will be, the world that as it will be in the future. So the past division is not like the future division. In the past division, if a person gets a division of a field, a grain of field, then he won't have an orchard because you only get one area, and so that area is either good for planting grain or good as an orchard, but not both. And if he gets a land that's good for an orchard, then he won't have grain. So each tribe, some will have grain and some will have orchards. They'll trade with each other to get the other stuff. But it's impossible to have all the various regions and climates that are in the land of Israel. But in the future, לעולם הבא, אין לך כל אחד ואחד שאין לו בהר ובשפלה ובעמק, שנאמר, שרו בן אחד, שר יהודה אחד, שר לוי אחד. הקדוש ברוך הוא מחלק להן בעצמו, שנאמר, ולמחלקותם נאום השם. But in the future division, in times of Mashiach, each and every person will have an area of land that will include a mountainous region, a lowland, and a valley. And each of these different topographies are good for planting this or that, grain or trees. And so each of the Shevatim will have an appropriate area. As the Pasuk says in Yechezkel, that there's a gate for Reuben, a gate for Yehuda, a gate for Levi. This is talking about gates of Yerushalayim, meaning one tribe won't be far away from Yerushalayim, another close by, but somehow will be divided such that each of the tribes will have access to Yerushalayim, and they will also each have access to all of the different topographies of the land of Israel. Now, how can you possibly divide the land so that everybody is near everything and everybody has every geography? Well, that's really hard to do, but don't worry, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will divide the land himself, meaning more miraculous, more directly than before, where the humans divided the land by areas, and then just by the Urim V'Tumim and the lottery, they picked out and matched up each one with the other. But they divided more or less. Okay, here's the north, right, middle, south, and so east, west. So they divided into pieces so that not everybody was near Yerushalayim, and people only got one type of land. But in the future, Hashem will divide it, and it will be perfect in such a way that everybody will be precisely equal. Katani mehat shebatechila lo nitchaleka ele lishnem asar shevatim shema'mina lishvatim miflug shema'mina. So now that was the end of the Braita. We brought this whole Braita to prove from this one line that it says at the beginning in the first division it was divided into 12, meaning by tribe. So we see that it was divided by tribe. Every tribe got an equal amount of area. And that is the conclusion of this Gemara. Now we're going to go through different parts of that Baraita and explain it further. Amar Mor, Atida Eretz Yisrael shetit chalek l'shlosha asar shevatim, idach leman. The Baraita said that in the future the land of Israel will be split up into 13 parts, 13 tribes. So who is the 13th one for? All the 12 tribes are accounted for. Amar Rav Chisda lanasi. Rav Chisda explains it goes to the prince or the king. Will have his own section and own his own area of Israel. Tichtiv ha'abed ha'ir ya'abduhu mikol shibtei Israel. They that serve the city out of all the tribes of Israel shall till it. So who serves the city? Who's in charge? That will be the prince or the king. Amar le Rapapa l'Abaye ema ron gar be'alma. Rapapa says to Abaye, wait, that pasuk doesn't necessarily mean that the king actually gets a whole piece of land. Maybe it's talking about wages or taxes that he collects from, it's a land tax that he collects from the land. No, you cannot say that because another pasuk in Yechezkel, a few pasukim later, says that the leftover will go to the king on one side, on the other side of sacred offerings, and of the possession of the city. So you go, this part of the city that goes to the king, so he gets part of the land. So the Baraita says that it was divided by money, because the pasuk says whether more or fewer. Now, how could it be that more or fewer, but still they all get an equal amount? So it must be that they exchange some money for something. So if you say this is talking about good land and bad land, which is the way we interpret it, because that's how we understood it initially, that someone who gets a good piece of land will pay the person who gets the bad piece of land so that financially it'll be equal. Say that can't be. What are we talking about? Fools? No one would take compensation for a bad piece of land. It's just not a good deal, because a good piece of land produces forever. And so it's constant income. So there's no amount of money that you would take now up front to take a bad piece of land. That would just be a bad deal, and they wouldn't be so foolish as to accept such a deal. Rather, we're talking about how close or far away one is from Jerusalem. So it's about location. So if you're far from Jerusalem, then those close to Jerusalem will pay you. All right, that's worth it. And there is a dispute among two Tanaim about how exactly they paid. Rabbi Eliezer said they actually paid with cash. Rabbi Yoshua said they paid with an extra parcel of land, so that someone that lived close would either give cash or give a extra piece of land to the person that lived far away in order to compensate that they'd have to be traveling farther to come to Yerushalayim or for the holidays and whenever they wanted to come. It was divided by a lottery, as it says ach bagodal, but the word ach is a limiting word, only by godal. So Baraita says ach bagodal, that limiting word comes to exclude Yehoshua and Caleb. They did not get their possession by lottery. So what does that mean? Lemai ilema de la shikul kelal hashta delav didhu shikul didhu mibae. If you say they didn't get any land at all, that can't be, because they even inherited land that was not originally theirs. Remember we said above that they took the land of the spies. So all the more so, they would have their own piece of land that they themselves deserved. Ela shelo natlu begoral ela al pi Hashem. Rather, they did not get their land based on the lottery, but rather directly as spoken by Hashem, said exactly what land they should get. Yoshua dichtiv al pi Hashem natnu lo et ha'ir asher sha'al et timnat serach behar Ephraim. A pasuk in Yoshua says that regarding Yoshua, according to the commandment of Hashem, they gave him the city that he asked for, and he also gave him timnat serach in the hill country of Ephraim. Now this word serach is spelled a different way later. Ketiv serach uchtiv cheres. On one pasuk it says serach, but later on in the book of Yoshua, it refers to the same place as cheres, same letters, but just mixed up. So which one is it? Amar Rabbi Elazar, batchila peroteha kecheres ulbasof peroteha masrichin. Vikad amra batchila masrichin ulbasof kacheres. Rabbi Elazar explains that at first the fruit there was dry and hard like clay, but afterwards it was blessed and it became so juicy and plump that actually it spoiled, which is also not, it was better than dry, but also not a great thing. So another interpretation says, at first it would spoil early, and then it was long-lasting as clay. Not that it tasted like clay, but clay lasts thousands of years. You could pick it up today in archaeology and still read it. So the fruit lasted a long time. Kalev dichtiv vayitenu lechaleb et Chevron kasher diber Moshe vayoresh misham et shelosha bnei ha'anak. And we know that Kalev also did not get his portion by lottery, but rather directly by Hashem, as the pasuk in Shoftim says. They gave Chevron to Kalev as Moshe had spoken, presumably based on God's instruction, and he drove out from there the three sons of the giant. Chevron ir miklat havai. Now we ask a question. How could it be that Kalev got the city of Chevron? Chevron was a city of refuge that belonged to the Kohanim, to Leviim. So it cannot be that it went to Kaleb. Amar Abaye, Parvaraha. Tichtib ve'etzedeh ha'ir ve'et chasareha na'atenu lechaleb ben Yefoneh ba'achuzato. Abaye explains, no, not the city itself, but rather the outskirts of the city, as the pasuk says, the fields of the city and the villages thereof they gave to Kaleb. So a city he didn't get, that was a city of refuge, but the areas surrounding it, the suburbs and the fields, that went to Kaleb for his possession. Next Mishnah, אחד הבן ואחד הבת בנחלה, אלא שבן נוטל פי שניים בנכסי האב, ואינו נוטל פי שניים בנכסי האם. והבנות ניזונות מנכסי האב, ואינן ניזונות מנכסי האם. The Mishnah teaches that both a son and a daughter are the same regarding inheritance. The Gemara is going to spend all its time discussing what does that mean? The same in what aspect? They're not exactly the same, so what does that mean? Rather, except for, so here's the difference between them, that a son gets a double portion from the inheritance of the father, but the sons do not get a double portion from the inheritance of a mother, meaning the double portion that goes to a firstborn only applies when a father dies, the father's inheritance, then the son gets a firstborn. But the mother's inheritance, which also, if there are sons, it goes to the sons, then the children do not, the firstborn does not get a double portion. And furthermore, daughters will get sustained from the inheritance of a father, but they do not get sustained from the inheritance of a mother. In other words, if a father dies with sons and daughters, then the sons inherit. However, the daughters get sustained from the inheritance as part of the condition in the ketubah that says that the daughters, although they don't inherit because there are sons, but they have to be provided for until they're married from the estate. That only applies when the father dies. However, if the mother dies and there are sons and daughters, then the sons inherit and they do not have to provide for the daughters because the mother doesn't have to pay the ketubah. There's no obligation on the inheritance that the sons get to provide for the daughters. Okay, Gemara asks, "Mai echad ben v'echad bat lenachala." What does the first clause mean? What is it coming to teach us? That the sons and daughters are the same? Same in what aspect? And how does it relate to the continuation, except that they're different when it comes to the taking double, that they only take double from the father, but not from the mother's estate. So in what way are they the same? If you say it means that they inherit equally, that when there are sons and daughters, they all inherit, the sons and the daughters get equal shares, that's not true, because the Mishnah, what we learned earlier, says that a son precedes a daughter, and all the descendants of a son precede the daughter, so that even if the son has a daughter, that granddaughter will inherit before a daughter of the deceased. So they're not exactly the same in that sense, because sons precede daughters. So that's not what the Mishnah means. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Hachi Kamar, Echad haben ve'echad habat notnin bera'ui kebamusak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak explains this is what the first line of the Mishnah means, that both sons and daughters inherit that which is currently in the possession of the father when he dies, just like that which will come in. Muhzak is that which he currently has. Ra'ui is that which he is owed. Someone owes some money to the father, or an inheritance that the father will get in the future. Both of those things are inherited by the descendants, and that's true for a son and a daughter. Maybe that's what the opening of the Mishnah is coming to teach us. But that can't be either, because we already have a Mishnah from which we can learn that. And the Mishnah shouldn't be redundant. Hanamet hanena benot Selofchad natnu shelosha chalakim benachala. Chelek avihen shehaya miyosei Misraim vechelko im echav minichsei chefer. We learned that the daughters of Selofchad actually got 3 portions of inheritance. One that their father deserved, because he is one of the people that left Mitzrayim, so he was allotted a section, and a part of it that they got from their grandfather. That all Selofchad's brothers also would have gotten a portion, but Selofchad was a Bechor, so he got double from the grandfather Chefer. Now, Selofchad actually died before Chefer. So at the time that Selofchad died, they inherited that which Selofchad had, Kiba Muhzak, and later on, when their grandfather Chefer died, then they got that also. So you see that they inherited Ra'ui, that which was not in his hand yet, but that Selofchad would have gotten, that was owed to, that was coming to the hands of Selofchad eventually. They got that as well. So we know this law from that Mishnah, so it can't be that our Mishnah is coming to teach that. Ve'od my ela, and furthermore, what does it mean ela? The word ela should relate to the law above, and if the law above is teaching us that sons and daughters both get that which is coming into an estate, even though it's not there yet, so then how does that relate to the continuation, which is about a double portion? So it wouldn't make sense that the ela should mean something exceptional about the very same thing that it's talking about. So it has to be something about a double portion that is saying, oh, it's true in this sense, in this law, but not for that aspect of the law. So we try something else. Rather, Rab Papa proposes that the first line of the Mishnah teaches that both a son and a daughter get a section, get the double portion of their father. If their father is a firstborn and the grandfather dies, then the double portion that the father would have gotten goes to both a son and a daughter. Maybe that's what it's teaching in the Mishnah, where it says Echad haben ve'echad habat benachala. But then we answer, no, that can't be either. Hanamet hanena v'shaya bechor notel shenei chalakim. We already know that also from a previous Mishnah about the daughters of Selofchad, because it says that Selofchad, was a firstborn, and therefore the daughters got the double portion from Chefer, their grandfather. So this law is already demonstrated. Obviously, it's true for a son, and here we learn it's also true for a daughter. Ve'od mai ela, and furthermore, it has to fit with the continuation of the Mishnah. So according to this answer, yes, the opening portion is talking about the double portion of a firstborn, and the continuation also is talking about the double portion of a firstborn, but that's not sufficient for it to match up, because the continuation is talking about how a son gets a double portion from the father, but not from the mother. So what does that have to do with a son and a daughter, right? The continuation is talking about the law of firstborn as it relates to the father, that he gets it, but not from his mother's inheritance. But this should match up somehow with a son and a daughter being the same in some ways, but the son and the daughter are not the same in some way. But the continuation is not about the difference between a son and a daughter's inheritance. And therefore, we're going to try again. Ela amar Rav Asher hachika amar. Echad ben habanim, ve'echad bat ben habanot, im amar yirash kol nechasai devarav kayamin. Rav Asher says, the opening line of the Mishnah is coming to teach us that if, let's say, the father on his deathbed chooses one son among sons to inherit everything, or he has many daughters who are going to inherit, but he says, I want this particular daughter to inherit everything. If he said that let this particular son or this particular daughter inherit all of my property, then that stands. He can do that. He can choose if he wants. He has a favorite, and he gives everything to that person. And this is what the Mishnah is teaching us, that this applies both to a son and to a daughter. So Rav Asher says that's what the Mishnah is talking about. But now we ask, Keman, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. Who is this following? It follows the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, who says this in a Mishnah later on in the Masechet. Hakatani la lekaman, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka omer, im amar al mi shera'ui liyorosho devarav kayamin, al mi she'en ra'ui liyorosho en devarav kayamin. So this is a problem, because why would this Mishnah have to teach this law if we already have it later on in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka in a Mishnah, where he teaches that if someone says, I want this particular person to inherit all my property, if it's one of his descendants that's in line to inherit him, then fine, it stands. But if he picks a random person, just a friend who's not related to, who would not be in the succession of his inheritance, then it does not stand. So we can see from here that if it's a son among sons or daughter among daughters, they are within the line of inheritance, and so therefore such a statement would stand. So I know this already from the later Mishnah. Why would I have to repeat it in this Mishnah? Satam lan Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, and maybe you'll say, oh, we wanted to teach this Mishnah because it's anonymous, and by having an anonymous Mishnah follow this opinion, so now that demonstrates that the halacha follows that opinion, because if I only had the later one in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, then I would assume, oh, it's only a minority opinion. So maybe that's why this Mishnah teaches it sitam anonymously, but that doesn't work either, because sitam v'achar kach machloketi, ustam v'achar kach machaloket, and halacha kistam. The order goes the wrong way. If you have an anonymous Mishnah, and afterwards, in the same Masechet, you have a controversy about it. That's the order here. And anytime you have such an order with anonymous and then a controversy, that means we do not follow the Satam. So really, it doesn't make sense. If it was the other way around, that there was an earlier Mishnah that taught Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka said this, and then a later Mishnah said Satam, then I would accept your answer. We need the later Mishnah to teach us that's the halacha. But in this case, just leave out this Mishnah, because the halacha does not follow him anyway. My Ella. And furthermore, we still have the same question that the Ella clause says that the continuation has to match the beginning. And the continuation is about how a son and daughter are different. But in this answer, the son and the daughter are the same. And so we need yet another answer. Here's the final one. Ella amar mor bar Rav Ashe hachika amar echad ben ve'echad bat shavin benichse ha'em u benichse ha'av. Ella shehaben notel pi shenayim benichse ha'av no notel pi shenayim benichse ha'em. This is what it's coming to teach, that a son and a daughter are the same. In what way are they the same? They're the same in the inheritance from the mother and from the father, meaning that if a father dies without sons, then it goes to the daughters. And similarly, if a mother dies without sons, then it goes to the daughters. So that's the same. The Mishnah didn't say all that. The Mishnah just said, Echad ben ve'echad abat ben achala. Sons and daughters are the same regarding inheritance. What part of inheritance? Oh, so now we know that they are the same when it comes to inheriting, that they both will inherit from a father, and they both can inherit from a mother. And in both cases, it's the same way, that if there's no sons, then it goes to the daughters. That is the way it's the same. But there is a difference in that a son will get a double portion from a father. When the father dies, the sons get a double portion, but not from the mother. And so here there is a difference. And the continuation of the Mishnah then says, well, yeah, that's true for sons. For daughters, it's a completely different thing. For daughters, when a father dies and the sons inherit, then the daughters get sustained. But when the mother dies and it goes to the sons, then the daughters do not get sustained. So you see, it's showing, the continuation is in fact showing the difference between what happens to sons and what happens to daughters. When there are sons and daughters and the sons inherit, so it makes a difference. If it's from the father, the sons inherit and the daughters get sustained. If it's from the mother, then the sons inherit and the daughters do not get sustained. So the whole Mishnah is very nice and clear now. The opening says, sons and daughters will both inherit. That is, if there's no sons, then the daughters do inherit. But there is a difference when there are sons, in that the daughters are treated differently than the sons. When the sons inherit, the daughters get something. They get sustenance when it's from the father, but they get nothing when it's from the mother. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.